What's up, guys? This is Nick from Arch City Poker, and in today's vlog, going to be continuing the How to Beat Live Low Stakes Poker series with today's topic covering straddling. So, is straddling a profitable play? Is it profitable as the button straddler, as part of a Mississippi straddle that your room allows you to do? Is it profitable under the gun as a traditional straddler? What is a straddle? For those of you that don't even know what it is, let's first get into that. So, straddle is essentially a third bet or a third blind, I guess I should say, or a blind raise pre-flop. Traditional straddle will be done from under the gun. What this does is it forces the player under the gun +1 to act first, and then allows the player under the gun to have the option if he's given that option, essentially, if everybody just calls to him. So a Mississippi straddle is done by any other position on the table but the small blind or big blind. So it can be done under the gun all the way up to the button. Is it ever profitable to straddle? The answer is pretty much no, unless you're on the button in a very specific scenario, in my opinion. But I think that putting in money blind voluntarily with a random hand is always going to be minus EV, especially when you're out of position. There's no strategy where this is going to be profitable. If you guys do this under the gun to try and generate action at your table, it can do that, but you're still putting money in blind, and it's still very unprofitable. You often are not making money from under the gun. You want to play the least amount of hands possible from that spot when you're opening from anywhere on the table. So straddling from anywhere under the gun to the button, don't do it. Unless the only time I ever consider straddling is, in fact, on the button as part of a Mississippi straddle, if your room allows you to do this, and only if I have two tough players in the blinds to my immediate left. The reason that you can consider this is that it then forces the small blind and big blind to act first. They should be coming in with much, much tighter and stronger ranges. Therefore, because they are forced to act first and they have everybody else at the table that has to act after them, they're probably going to be doing a lot of folding. And right away, you get two of probably the better players at your table out of the hand. You have the best position pre-flop and post-flop, and you can often bloat the pot in the best position. So I think that is a scenario where you can possibly consider it. I do that sometimes. However, I'm often very table aware and positionally aware, so I try not to have the two other best players at the table on my immediate left. Sometimes it's impossible if there's only one game of the particular type of game format or stakes that you are playing in your room. If there's only one table that's being spread, then it's going to be tough to switch seats if every seat's filled, obviously. So if you do have to deal with two very tough players to your left and you're allowed to button straddle, you might want to consider that. Now, the downsides to straddling, and even on the button in this scenario, and in any other scenario where you guys straddle, these are all the negatives besides just putting in money blind with a random hand, which is always going to be minus EV. You pretty much inflate the blinds to the next level of games. Let's say it's like a live 1-2 game, for example, and your straddle is $5. You've essentially made it a 2-5 game. And what you do is then you shrink stacks. And where a lot of your guys' edge will be is usually post-flop. If you have a post-flop edge on most of the other players at your table, you want stacks to be a little deeper usually. You want to have more money left behind. You want higher SPRs post-flop. And when you button straddle or when you straddle from anywhere on the table, you take that away a little bit by basically just cutting all the effective stack sizes in half. So you allow players to be able to easily commit on the flop more often. There's not going to be as much creativity, I guess, room for creativity and flexibility on the turn and or river. So I think that straddling not only puts you in a spot where you're putting in money blind, as I said, with a random hand, but you're also taking away a lot of your post-flop edge by shrinking the effective stack sizes. So that's something that you guys should really consider. I don't think a lot of players do that. Another point I want to make real quick is that an under the gun straddle, a Mississippi straddle, it can generate action, but what I've seen from rooms that allow a Mississippi straddle, where it's often going to be the button straddling, That often kills action in my experience. It makes games much more loose and passive. Players are looking to limp, thinking that the buttons always get a raise, and then they can just call that way, or they can limp re-raise. I think the button straddle effectively hurts games, and I think it kills games in a way. Now, I think there's a lot of players and a lot of people that you guys might want to argue with me and let me know that you think differently, and that's fine. Your room and your specific player pool may play differently according to the straddle, but in all the rooms that I've played in before where the straddle's allowed to happen as part of a Mississippi straddle, then it seems to kind of hurt games, in my opinion. The only time besides when I said that I think button straddling it can be profitable and smart is, let's say your table is looking to generate a little more action and everybody agrees to a round of straddles, or multiple rounds of a straddle, I should say, where everybody's doing it from the same position on the table. So let's say everybody agrees to an under the gun straddle for one down. That's going to be fine. And maybe it is, and I'm not going to say maybe because it is minus EV to still straddle, but if everybody's doing it, then it's somewhat neutral. And it might actually help your game overall as far as generating some action. The players start to get a little more involved. And then once players start putting more money in the pot, especially if you guys have a post-flop edge of any kind, then that's better for you. You can make more money that way based on the fact that they'll often make bigger mistakes when there's more money in the pot. So that's something to consider. So like if your table, if you sit down and the other 8 guys or whoever at the table say, look, we're doing a round of button straddles, are you okay with this? Go ahead and say yeah. Don't be the guy that says no, I don't want to do it. If you want to, that's fine, but I would suggest going with it, and I think it'll be fun for you to do so. Like I said, it might be minus EV in theory, but it's pretty much neutral because everybody's doing it. So just don't do it if nobody else is doing it, pretty much. And like I said, it's not profitable to do it anywhere on the table. The only place it can be profitable is on the button. If you have 2 very good players to your left in the blinds, I often like to make them act first, essentially. So I hope that this vlog helped you guys hopefully understand a little more about the button straddle. And if you guys are straddling and never thought of this stuff, then hopefully this will help enlighten you a little bit. And if you guys have any comments or questions, as usual, just let me know in the comment section. Until next time, this is Nick from Arch City Poker. Take care.